Senator Wambua, Senator also from Kitui, and also Deputy Leader in the Senate. So have I left out anybody? No, we are there. Are you guys ready? Good. We actually make this statement further to the one that was issued by our party leader, the Honorable Raila Odinga, on the matter of the budget, very important matter, for which he received unnecessary criticism, some of them empty threats. So this is a statement by Azimio One Kenya Coalition Party on June 14th, 2024, and entitled Kenya Kwanza Regimes 2024-2025 Budget Estimates and Finance Bill 2024 are a monumental betrayal of public trust. Good afternoon, and thank you for honoring our invitation to attend this important press conference. The Azimio One Kenya Coalition Party convened to discuss the budget estimates 2024-2025 and the Finance Bill 2024, assessing the nation's overall condition and the impact of the Kenya Kwanza regime. We now wish to make the following announcement to the Kenyan public regarding our position on the two matters. On the number one item, budget estimates 2024-2025, in February, we informed the Kenyans that the Kenya Kwanza's economic proposals, policies and plans were unsound, unrealistic, and unrectifiable. This regime's preference for self-interest over the nation's well-being is evident in the review of the 2024-2025 budget estimates. Indeed, the regime, with a contemptuous attitude towards the common king, has revealed its deep betrayal of the hustlers it claims to serve. The budgetary allocations do not promote economic growth, but betray Kenyans. This regime has concealed its true goals of maintaining an oppressive and equal system benefiting a select few elites under the illusion of progress. Kenya Kwanza's prioritization of selective shareholder financing or financial gain over the needs of Kenyan citizens is a shameful decision given the country's high living expenses, high poverty, and unemployment. Indeed, the regime's continued allocations to state departments and agencies that duplicate county functions exemplify a lack of concern for Kenyans' well-being. The budgetary process lacks transparency and accountability, indicating a government operating with impunity and disregard for consequences. Indeed, from the CSAs, PSAs to the chair of the House Budget Committee and the printed budget books, all have who or what should Kenyans believe. This is a continuation of KK's culture of duplicity and lies, to the point they have forgotten what lie they told Kenyans yesterday. The Kenya Kwanza regime's 2024-2025 budget, despite its lofty and imprecise private jets and transporting obscenely large delegations overseas in the name of benchmarking that they could not borrow or learn how these nation states have actually been reducing taxes to stimulate economies and be able to create jobs. This is actually all of that benchmarking is short of parsley. The headline in one of the UK papers, which is basically elections are next month in the UK, and both the Conservatives and Labour are overdoing each other and showing which of the two formations will reduce taxes, and it is opposite in our country. This, firstly, to please the Washington masters, is exemplified by the absence of genuine public consultation and supervision. And by Washington Masters, of course, you also know that is where the Bretton Woods are actually based. Lest you think we are attacking any other regime, we are not. It is a contention that despite the budget estimate 2024-2025 hyperbole, flowery language, and complicated figures, it simply does not stimulate economic activity. It does the opposite and seeks to tax every adult Kenyan 24,000 shillings more, additional to what we all know as, for example, the housing tax and the very lean pay slips. Ladies and gentlemen, this can only be termed as a reckless race to the bottom. I don't know how many times this year Ndungu repeated the words bottom up, bottom up. So became so boring. Kenyans have lost touch with that kind of physiology. Do not take our word for it. These are some of the examples of increased expenditure. Number one, Office of the Executive President, 1.2 billion shillings. Office of the Deputy President, 678 million shillings. Minister of Defense, 11 billion shillings. Addition. All these additional. Foreign Affairs, 1.4 billion. National Treasury, 6 billion. One wonders what the Treasury has to spend this money for. Minister of Transport, 1.3 billion. Minister of Cooperatives, 2 billion. This is a 23.6 billion increase in recurring expenditure. This is a budgeted corruption in the name of tea, mandazi, and flowers. This is not development, but sheer eating. It's their time to eat, so they believe. Further, we highlight the following misplaced allocations. Number one, the National Treasury has 26 billion more in the name of development. Two, the State Department for Devolution has an increase of 2.6 billion in development expenditure. If this regime believes in the success of devolution, then these funds should form part of the equitable share to the county governments. Number three, the State Department of Housing has been allocating an additional 72 billion shillings. This is higher than that of 10 counties combined. What is the line item 1071, 1066, 00? Was it the same of the beast? Some wonder. Strategic response, this is what it is. That particular line item is entitled Strategic Response to Public Initiatives. Strategic Response to Public Initiatives. That comes to 2.5 billion shillings. If that is not budgeted corruption, what is it? Who amongst you learned members of the media and even learned friends of the legal fraternity can tell us what the meaning of strategic response to public initiatives? We estimate 1 trillion shillings as budgeted corruption for the next financial year. In light of these grievous transgressions, we as a coalition urge the international community, the civil society organizations, and concerned citizens, both at home and abroad, to stand in solidarity with Kenyans in condemning Kenya Kwanza's regime's blatant disregard for the public good. We call for quick action to bring those responsible for this breach of trust accountable and to lobby for a budgetary framework that prioritizes the needs and concerns of all Kenyans, not just the privileged few. Kenya Kwanza may have been successful in unveiling its punitive budget, but it has fallen short of its obligation to lead with honesty, with fairness, and compassion. Kenyans deserve better, and we will not stop fighting for them to be given the voice and direction they so richly deserve. On the Finance Bill 2024, as our second item, the Kenya Kwanza regime's planned finance bill 2024 seeks to fund a 3.914 trillion budget through tax collection of 3.354 trillion shillings. This good goal comprises several new and amended tax measures that will have a substantial impact on both individuals and businesses in our country. Azimio believes that Kenyans can only thrive if we stimulate the economy, not if we arbitrarily and consistently raise their tax burden. If the bill is passed as written, Kenyans must be prepared to give up their votes or what remains of them in the second wave of KK taxes. We know that ordinary Kenyans, the Mamboga, border riders, and the people of Mjengo and Kokoteni have nothing to gain from this bill because Kenya Kwanza is targeting them for the second time with a double taxation plan that aims to increase taxes by approximately 24,000 shillings per 100 Kenyan per year. The majority of the tax measures in the 2024 finance bill are punitive in nature with substantial consequences for Kenyans. For example, the new tax on motor vehicles proposes a 2.5% tax on the value of motor vehicles with a minimum of 5,000 shillings and a maximum of 100,000 shillings, which if adopted will raise the cost of car ownership and result in higher insurance rates. It is predicted to have an impact on the transportation and logistics industries, thereby increasing the cost of living via a multiplier effect. The new withholding tax on digital marketplaces levies a 20% tax on non-residents and 5% on residents' income from digital marketplaces. This will raise tax compliance expenses for digital marketplace operators, perhaps leading to higher pricing for consumers as businesses pass on the tax burden. The proposed rise in excise duty on money transfer services from 15% to 20% will raise the cost of financial transactions, hurting both businesses and individuals who use these services daily. The significant economic presence tax, which proposes to replace the digital service tax with a 30% tax on non-resident digital service providers' taxable profit, calculated as 20% of gross turnover, will significantly increase the tax burden on digital service providers from 1.5% under DST, abbreviation for digital service tax, to an effective rate of 6%. This will deter digital companies from operating in Kenya, which will stunt the sector's expansion. Kenya's efforts to establish a circular economy to manage its waste and become a regional recycling hub will be further undermined by the recently proposed eco-levy environmental tax, which targets importers and manufacturers of specific products to set up waste management infrastructure. This new tax will duplicate the current levy mandated and extended producer responsibility (EPR) scheme, and will also remove the incentive to increase investments in recycling waste products. Additionally, the eco-levy will be detrimental to wananchi as it will increase prices for all plastic packaging materials, batteries, and hygiene products. For instance, the 150 shilling levy per kilogram of plastic packaging will increase the cost of a 400-gram loaf of bread by 9 shillings, from 65 shillings to 74 shillings. Increase 1 liter of cooking oil by 16.81 shillings, from 300 to 316.81. Increase of 1 kilogram of powder detergent by 30 shillings, from 200 to 230. Bread and other necessities will now be subject to a standard rated VAT instead of zero rated VAT, which will directly affect household spending and drive up the already expensive cost of living. As Azimio, we firmly believe that these are serious ramifications for Kenya's economy and standard of living if the bill is passed into law. Should it be put to effect, it will significantly raise production costs, will destroy the industry's ability to compete, resulting in closures and job losses. As a result, our local and export markets will be negatively impacted, retail prices will rise, wananchi will be burdened, and cash flow requirements will rise during a period when interest rates are rising. Azimio believes that our country's focus should be on helping enterprises and the manufacturing industry to create jobs and wealth, increase productivity, cut living costs, and finally bring prosperity to Kenyans. We therefore reaffirm our stand that all well-meaning Kenyans must oppose the Finance Bill 2024 and have thus instructed all our parliamentary members to lead from the front in rejecting this punitive bill in its totality. Finally, we salute Kenyans who have used text messaging, phone calls, and social media initiatives, #FindMyMP, to urge their legislators to listen to their constituents and vote no. This peaceful civic assertiveness and engagement will eventually become the norm, especially under our leadership as your government in waiting. Thank you, and may God bless Kenya. End of the statement. I'll ask my colleagues here to add one or two things. While I was away, there was some very interesting political developments. It was wartime Prime Minister Churchill of the UK, who said a week in politics is a very long time. And I think somebody had a hashtag find Kalonzo. I am back and in good spirits. Maybe I can ask Yoni, because I want to also recognize the fact that the spokesperson for former President Uhuru Kenyatta issued a very clear statement on some of his budgeted corruption. Monies are budgeted for the office of retired president, retired deputy presidents, the vice presidents, and premiers, and nothing seems to be happening in those offices. Ask yourselves, where does this money go? So it is now clear, and I think we can also ask my friends here, Eugene and Kioni and Safuna, you're ready now. Derito, you are the author, or senator, any of the senators, to say something. Maybe I'll start with Kioni.
Thank you. I think it's clear that what we are saying as Azimio is that we condemn the budget and the finance bill in total, and we actually reject it from this platform, or reject them from where we start, and are asking our members of parliament to hear it, hear the members of the public, listen to what we are telling you. You are elected to represent the people, not to represent the disaster in the name of Ruto. And why do I call him a disaster? He has reduced school feeding program by 2 billion shillings. He has reduced the education budget by 25%. Special education by 35%. The primary education by 20%. We can actually see the return of provincial administration in full swing, to the point where the chiefs are now required to ensure that you have complied with your tax requirements. Back to the dark old days. I think it is important to also note that the special protection, Pesa Wazee, has been reduced by 3 billion shillings. We have 16 days to the end of the financial year or something like that, and we should be on the lookout for the mother of all times in terms of corruption. The stealing that will happen between now and the end of the financial year, it's something that if it was addressed last time when we were budgeting and reading the finance bill, the burden that we have already gone through will not have been occasioned on Kenyans. Why? Because there are very many of the votes that have not been exhausted, and they will be doing everything else, including buying of shoes and belts, to ensure that they exhaust that money. His Excellency has mentioned about our former president. And I think what he was saying, in short, what I had, is that in the last financial year, his office had been allocated something like 600 million shillings. Throughout that period, he had only received 28 million shillings. The balance had also been spent. And alikuwa anauliza, nani alikula? Wakenya waambiwe na waache kuambiwa kwamba alipatiwa. And why you need a committee to answer such a simple question, it actually helps you to know that Mwizi must be part of that committee, or one constituting the committee. And I want to say this, nimalize na kusema ya kwamba this double speak, wale ambao wako na magari msome vizuri. Bunge jana amesema, if you look at what he read and presented, there is no capping on the motor vehicle tax. In this presentation there is no capping. Ni ingine tulikuwa tunafukushwa hapa wa Kenya is what was given a cap of 100,000. So you start working on the cost of your vehicle or the value of your vehicle and know the corresponding amount of money that you need to pay on an annual basis. I think it is not useful anymore, perhaps to own a car. But I conclude by saying this. Look at the way they abandoned all the improvement on the transport sector, public transport sector. If that had been achieved, many people would choose to use the public transport and avoid buying cars. So you abandon one way and you kill us through the other way. We have a disaster budget, a disaster finance bill, and a disaster regime. Wakenya, let us send these guys home. Let them be a one-term regime. Na wale ambao wanafikiria ya kwamba utakaa kwa hiyo chimo ya ukora na uanze kusanya watu wakufuate ukiwa kwa hiyo chimo ya ukora, kwenda ukadanganya watu huko kwa village ama pahali ingine. We are not going to be fooled again. And again, I want to repeat this. Don't think that when you apologize and say the other things you are saying, we are going to follow you kwa hiyo chimo ya wizi. We are not going to be part of that. This is the alternative, and we are working on it. I thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, Dorito.
Thank you. I think I'll only emphasize 3 points. The first is this question of budgeted corruption and the way in which it morphs. First, it is in the nature explained by the Honorable Keone and the spokesperson that you put figures in a vote, inflate them, or you don't disburse to the rightful person. I think you previously explaining to put in the vote head used to pay her, you will see an amount that is several times what her annual salary is. The question is, you, another person who is also controller of budget. And that's what you're seeing. You put a figure in the benefits package of the retired president, then you don't disburse, and you wonder who then is there. The other way budgeted corruption is, of course, you make provisions that outrightly, if you examine them, you could see something is amiss. As His Excellency explained to you, the National Treasury has a very interesting development group called Strategic Risk to public initiatives. What is that route? Or is it a slush fund for senior executives in the regime to use for? What is that route? The second point I want to emphasize is that you cannot grow the economy by increasing taxes. I mean, honestly, ladies and gentlemen, fellow Kenyans, this regime is fond of traveling. They have been to the US today, I understand they've gone to Italy and so on. They are fond of traveling. Throughout the world, governments are reducing taxes in order to stimulate economic activity. What is this voodoo type economics where we think we are going to stimulate economic activity by increasing taxes? Finally, on the question of public debt, 70% of interest payments paid this year, and this year interest payment information, some of people there in this regime advising them that, you know, politics is out. Well, perhaps I should urge Kenyans that wasalimie, mkiwaona mahali popote muwasalimie in the manner that they want you to salimia them. I thank you.
Yeah, mutaenda kanisa.
Asante. Watoto na Finance Bill 2023. Kuna wale 176 walisema yes, na ndio sababu kila kitu kilipanda kutoka bottom kwenda juu, sababu ya ushuru. Masuala haya tuliyazungumzia kwenye maandamano na tukayazungumzia kule kwenye Bomas. Kwa walitaka kuzungumzia ushuru tena wa fedha ndio wabunge wetu. Wale 88 waliopinga mwaka jana, tunataka tena wapinge huu mswada wa mwaka huu, sababu ndio mbaya zaidi na unaongeza ushuru. Kama kwa mafuta mwaka jana waliongeza 16% kutoka 8% VAT kwa mafuta, na sasa tena tunasikia bado wanaongeza ushuru mwingine wa fuel levy kutoka 18% hadi 25%. Ushuru huu utaongeza gharama ya maisha, mawasiliano, kila kitu. Mafuta yakienda juu, nauli, maisha ya kila mtu yatakuwa magumu zaidi. Na ndio sababu tuomba wabunge wetu haswa wa Azimio waliosimama na Wakenya na wenzetu walio kule Kenya Kwanza pia, wale 176, wajue ya kwamba Rais mstaafu Moi alikuwa anasema siasa mbaya, maisha mbaya, lakini sera mbaya, maisha mbaya. Sera mbaya kama hii ya fedha itaumiza watu katika maeneo bunge yenu, haijalishi kama ni wana Azimio ama wana Kenya Kwanza. Na tuomba kwa muda huu uliosalia mswada ukija wiki ijayo, wabunge wetu wasisafiri, wabunge wetu wasikose kuwa bungeni, na wananchi muendelee kuweka hiyo pressure. Ile tulikuwa tunasema mulika mwizi, sasa mulika mbunge yako kabisa. Tujue wale watawasaliti 2027 chuma chao kimotoni. Kama mna maswala tuweze tukachukua machache. Yes.
Mulika mbunge.
I think Senator Sifuna can take that on behalf of...
Thank you. First, yes. All members of the National Assembly are to suspend any planned trips or any activities that would see them out of Nairobi for the duration of the consideration of the Finance Bill 2024, and that means from the date of tabling on Tuesday next week until a vote is taken. Now, last year, Your Excellency, you do remember that the coalition gave a position similar to the one that has been given this year again. Your Excellency, you will remember that we in ODM did undertake disciplinary proceedings party who either absconded or voted against the position of the coalition. But one of the problems that we are hoping to cure with the NADCO bills, Your Excellency, is that immediately political parties initiate disciplinary proceedings against their members. They run to court and obtain that then tie the hands of the political parties what they can do. So the biggest solution, in fact, Kenyans don't realize how powerful they are. We are getting feedback from members of the National Assembly from ODM that they can hear Kenyans. Kenyans are able to reach as a Kenyan, somebody who has a vote. The regime does not fear Sifuna of us here. The regime fears the Mwananchi, calling them to tell them that Chumachako Kimotoni, the way that my brother Eugene, ultimate power is with the Mwananchi. If you repeatedly you must answer to the Mwananchi. And lastly, Your Excellency, one of the economic advisors has involved activism leads to anything, despite the fact that when the regime was harassing him, digital activism secured the release of David Ndii from police custody. Now he has invited us to be a little bit more touchy, if I may, hands-on. Yes, he has invited us to be a bit hands-on, because he says politics is a contact sport. We have already established that he worships at Our Lady of the Rosary in Roseville. So we'll be joining him for Sunday night there, so that we are able to have contact with him and explain that we are unhappy with the policies that is promoting in this government. Thank you.
Has actually answered.
He's answered that bit. This digital activism is proving very effective. We will review our position as we go along.
Yeah, last one.
KK does not have majority of members of parliament. Through the budget and the finance bill, they still members of parliament. And some of them were so cheap like those in Jubilee that they actually had no value. You see, they followed Gachagua. Gachagua is running out of that place. Now they don't know where to go. That's why we are saying, Wakenya, nyinyi ndio mko na nguvu. Ruto never intended to help anybody. And that is why he attacked multi-party democracy from day one, so that he can control parliament and do whatever he wants. Wakenya wameona. And that is why they have started their own war against these fellas.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Like that hands-on.
Sit back, relax, and check out a world of hit TV shows and movies with Showmax. including a host of new Kenyan shows this year, streaming for Africa. Sign up on showmax.com.
Welcome to the Huberman Lab podcast, where we discuss science and science-based tools for everyday life. I'm Andrew Huberman, and I'm a professor of neurobiology and ophthalmology at Stanford School of Medicine. Today we are going to talk all about dopamine and what drives you to do the things that you do. We're going to talk about motivation and desire and craving, but also how dopamine relates to satisfaction and our feelings of well-being. And of course, any discussion about dopamine has to include a discussion about the potential for dopamine-induced addiction. Indeed, dopamine lies at the heart of addiction to all things. But today we are mainly going to focus on how what we do and how we do it and how we conceptualize those things leads to changes in this amazing molecule in our brain and bodies that we call dopamine. I'm going to teach you what dopamine is and what it is not. There are a lot of myths about the molecule dopamine. We often hear about so-called dopamine hits. Today we are going to dispel many common myths about dopamine, and we are going to talk about how dopamine actually works. We're going to discuss the biology of dopamine, the psychology. We will discuss some neural circuits, and a really exciting aspect of dopamine biology are so-called dopamine schedules. In other words, we are going to discuss how things like food, drugs, caffeine, pornography, even some plant-based compounds can change our baseline levels of dopamine, and in doing so, they change how much dopamine we are capable of experiencing from what could be very satisfying events or events that make us feel not so good because of things that we did or took prior. So I promise you it's going to be a vast discussion, but I will structure it for you, and you'll come away with a deep understanding of really what drives you. You will also come away with a lot of tools how to leverage dopamine so that you can sustain energy, drive, and motivation for the things that are important to you over long periods of time. Before we dive into the meat of today's discussion, I'd like to share with you a fascinating result that really underscores what dopamine is capable of in our brains and bodies, and underscores the fact that just through behaviors, no drugs, nothing of that sort, just through behaviors, we can achieve terrifically high increases in dopamine that are very long and sustained in ways that serve us. This is a result that was published in the European Journal of Physiology. I'll go into it in more detail later, but essentially what it involved is having human subjects get into water of different temperatures. So it was warm water, moderately cool water, and cold water. Had them stay in that water for up to an hour, and they measured, by way of blood draw, things like cortisol, norepinephrine, and dopamine. What was fascinating is that cold water exposure led to very rapid increases in norepinephrine and epinephrine, which is also just called adrenaline. It also led to increases in dopamine, and these increases in dopamine were very significant. They kicked in around 10 or 15 minutes after submersion into the cold water, and I should mention the head wasn't below water, it was just up to the neck. And the dopamine release continued to rise and rise and rise, and eventually reached 250% above baseline. Now what was interesting is after subjects got out of this cold water, that dopamine increase was sustained. And I know nowadays many people are interested in using cold water therapy as a way to increase metabolism and fat loss, but also to improve sense of well-being, improve cognition, improve clarity of mind. You know, there's something really special about this very alert but calm state of mind that seems to be the one that's optimal for pretty much everything except sleep, but for all aspects of work and for social engagement and for sport, that highly alert but calm state of mind really is the sweet spot that I believe most of us would like to achieve. And this cold water exposure, done correctly, really can help people achieve that state of mind through these increases in dopamine that last a very long time. So I will later detail the specifics of that study, what it entailed in terms of how long the variations that different subjects experienced, as well as how to limit the amount of stress hormone, cortisol, that's released as a consequence of the cold water. And we will also talk about compounds, supplements that people can take in order to increase their levels of dopamine should they choose. Before we begin, I'd like to emphasize that this podcast is separate from my teaching and research roles at Stanford. It is, however, part of my desire and effort to bring zero cost to consumer information about science and science-related tools to the general public. In keeping with that theme, I'd like to thank the sponsors of today's podcast. Our first sponsor is Roka. Roka makes sunglasses and eyeglasses that are of the absolute highest quality. I've spent a lifetime working on the visual system, and I can tell you that the visual system has to go through a lot of work in order to maintain clarity of what you see when there are shadows, when you go into different types of indoor lighting, and so on. And a lot of glasses don't work well because you put them on, and then you're in bright light, and you can see fine, but then you move into a shadow, and then you have to take them off, and they don't adjust, or they don't adjust quickly enough. With Roka, their eyeglasses and sunglasses are designed with the visual system biology in mind, so you always see things with perfect clarity. The glasses are also terrific because they're very lightweight, and they won't slip off your face if you're exercising, if you're running or biking. In fact, they were designed for the purpose of being able to be worn while you're engaging in those sorts of activities or simply working at your desk. I happen to wear readers at night when I drive or when I work, and I love their sunglasses because I can wear them anywhere, and also the aesthetics of their sunglasses and eyeglasses are terrific. Unlike a lot of other performance glasses that frankly make people look like cyborgs, the aesthetics on Rokas are really terrific. You could wear them anywhere you'd like to go. If you'd like to try Roka glasses, you can go to roka.com, that's ROKA.com, and enter the code Huberman to save 20% off your first order. That's Roka, ROKA.com, enter the code Huberman at checkout. Today's podcast is also brought to us by Inside Tracker. Inside Tracker is a personalized nutrition platform that analyzes data from your blood and DNA to help you better understand your body and help you reach your health goals. I'm a big believer in getting regular blood work done. And now with the advent of modern DNA tests, you can also analyze your DNA to see what you ought to be doing for your immediate and long-term health. We hear a lot these days about optimization, optimizing hormones, optimizing your metabolism, optimizing this, optimizing that. But unless you know the measurements of metabolic factors, hormones, and other things that are in your blood and DNA, you don't know what to optimize. With Inside Tracker, it makes all of that very easy. They can come to your house to take the blood and DNA test, or you can go to a nearby clinic. They send you the information, and you take those results, and unlike a lot of laboratories doing blood work out there and DNA tests, they have a simple platform, a dashboard, that walks you through your results and helps you identify what sorts of nutritional or behavioral or other types of practices you might want to incorporate into your life in order to positively impact your immediate and long-term health. It's a very easy system to use, and you will gain a ton of information simply by doing that test, whether or not you end up making changes to what you're doing or not. If you'd like to try Inside Tracker, you can go to insidetracker.com/Huberman to get 25% off any of Inside Tracker's plans. Just use the code Huberman at checkout. Today's episode is also brought to us by Headspace. Headspace is a meditation app backed by 25 published studies and has over 600,000 five-star reviews. I've been meditating for a long time, but I confess sometimes I meditate and sometimes I am very inconsistent about my meditation. Ideally, I would meditate every day for 20 or 30 minutes, but what I've found over the years is that I'll start a meditation practice, and then as life gets more stressful or busier, which is exactly when I need to meditate more, I tend to meditate less often. Switching over to Headspace as a meditation app really helped me stay consistent with my meditation practice. And that's because they have a huge range of meditations to select from. Some are short, some are longer. And in general, I try and get 20 minutes of meditation in every day, but some days it's just 5 minutes, and they have some terrific just 5-minute meditations. The science says that even a 5-minute meditation can be beneficial for different aspects of our brain and body. If you want to try Headspace, you can go to headspace.com/special offer, and if you do that, you'll get 1 month as a free trial with Headspace's full library of meditations that you can use in any situation. This is the best deal offered by Headspace right now, so if you're interested, go to headspace.com/special offer to get one free 1-month trial with Headspace's full library of meditations. I'd like to announce that there's an event that some of you may find very useful. This is an event put on by Logitech that I will be speaking at. It's called Rethink Education, the Biology of Learning, Reimagining Learning Through Neuroscience. And at this event, I will be speaking. There will be other speakers as well. And I will be talking about neuroplasticity and its applications for teaching and for learning. I will describe what I call the plasticity super protocol that incorporates all of what we know about rapid learning, efficient learning, and the best ways to teach and learn. It's geared towards educators of all kinds. It is zero cost, so please feel free to sign up. The event is September 30th, 2021 at 3 p.m. Eastern. You can find the registration link in the caption for this episode. So let's talk about dopamine. Most people have heard of dopamine, and we hear all the time now about dopamine hits. But actually, there's no such thing as a dopamine hit. And actually, the way that your body uses dopamine is to have a baseline level of dopamine, meaning an amount of dopamine that's circulating in your brain and body all the time. And that turns out to be important for how you feel generally, whether you're in a good mood, motivated, etc. And you also can experience peaks in dopamine above baseline. Now, this has a very specific name in the neurobiology literature, so-called tonic and phasic release of dopamine, and I'll explain what that means in a couple of minutes. But if you remember nothing else from this episode, please remember this, that when you experience something or you crave something really desirable, really exciting to you, very pleasurable, what happens afterwards is your baseline level of dopamine drops. Okay, so these peaks in dopamine, they influence how much dopamine will generally be circulating afterward. And you might think, oh, a big peak in dopamine, after that I'm going to feel even better because I just had this great event. Not the case. What actually happens is that your baseline level of dopamine drops, and I will explain the precise mechanism for that. Okay, in the neuroscience literature, we refer to this as tonic and phasic release of dopamine. Tonic being the low-level baseline that's always there circulating, released into your brain all the time, and then phasic, these peaks that ride above that baseline. And those two things interact, and this is really important. I'm going to teach you the underlying neurobiology, but even if you have no background in biology, I promise to make it all clear. I'll explain the terms and what they mean. And I'm excited to teach you about dopamine because dopamine has everything to do with how you feel right now as you're listening to this. It has everything to do with how you will feel an hour from